welcome everybody. We're excited tonight. We have the Penguin Lady with us. Her real name is Dyan, deNapoli, but we know her as the Penguin Lady. And she's going to tell you all about her background and what she does and about those cute little penguins and how they need our help. Thanks, Dyan.
Thanks, Terry. Oh, welcome everybody. How are you doing tonight?
Good.
Good? Thank you for coming out tonight. I'll just give you a little brief background about who I am. My name is Dyan deNapoli, known as the Penguin Lady. I worked at Boston's New England Aquarium for 9 years. I was a senior penguin aquarist there, so I took care of the penguins. And let me see, I was there until 2004, and then I left and started my company, which is called the Penguin Lady. And now I travel locally and internationally. I teach adults and children of all ages about penguin biology, behavior, and conservation. My mission is to raise awareness and funding to protect penguins because 15 now of the 18 penguin species are listed as threatened or endangered. And so I donate 20% of the proceeds from my book and from every appearance to penguin rescue groups. And so I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. And so today I wanted to tell you about the most extraordinary experience of my life. And I am just going to ask, could we turn off this bank of lights again?
I just turned it up.
Okay, thank you. Just so that people can see this better. Thanks. So I was working at the New England Aquarium. Actually, I'm going to go back just a little bit because sometimes what I do when I do a presentation, a lot of times I'm hired to come in and give the story of the treasure oil spill rescue, so I just have a long slideshow and talk for 45 minutes or an hour and just tell that story. But tonight is billed as an author event, and so normally for an author event, sometimes I don't even show pictures and I just talk about the book process and writing the book and a little bit about the story and maybe read a few selections. Tonight I wanted to mix it up a little bit, do something a little bit different. So I'm going to do a little bit of both. I want to tell you a little bit about what brought me to write this book, a little tiny bit, just briefly about my background and why this is I'm so passionate about this subject. And then I am going to show you some slides from this oil spill rescue and read a few selections from the book. And there's Sally, who I haven't seen in a long time. Hi, Sally. This is the Great Penguin Rescue. So when I was a kid, every once in a while, every so often, my mother would say, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I have no idea. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, let alone 10, 20 years from now. But I had all these sort of fantasies and dreams. And one of the things I was always the most passionate about was animals and the ocean. I grew up near the ocean. I grew up in Marblehead, Mass. And so my parents were sailors and skiers, and so we were always out on the water. And I loved being on the ocean, loved animals. And the thing I really wanted to be, aside from a geeky little kid, that wasn't my goal. What I was to be a dolphin trainer. So you might notice my lunchbox, which was my prized possession, had Flipper the dolphin on it. And Flipper was my idol. And most of you probably know who Flipper was. For those who don't, Flipper was a dolphin who would save humans from all the stupid things that they did. And so she was a very smart dolphin who could communicate with these 2 young boys that lived in Florida, and I wanted to grow up and work with Flipper. And so that was always this dream that I had in the back of my head, but no one could tell me how to do that. The teachers in school, they couldn't guide me in any direction. And besides that, it just seemed like a total fantasy job. Like, real people don't do that. You see that on TV or in the movies, but who is a dolphin trainer? I didn't know anybody who was a dolphin trainer. The other thing I dreamed about was writing a book. I loved reading, I loved writing, and I understand we have a very young author in the front row. I'd love to talk to you about that afterwards. How old are you? 8, and you've written a book already? Yeah. That's pretty exciting. That's pretty amazing. That's impressive. So, but again, that to me seemed like this fantasy that someday I'll write a book, but I had no idea what I'd ever write a book about until this experience that I had in South Africa. So I kind of floated around for many, many years. Sort of life took this circuitous route, and I did a lot of different things, and tested out a lot of different things while my parents kept saying, "Aren't you going back to college yet?" So it took about 11 years. I was a ski bum in Colorado, which was a ton of fun. I also was an assistance dog trainer at a place called Meads out in West Boylston, Mass. That trained service dogs, mostly for people either who were in wheelchairs or were deaf. And that was very rewarding. It was a volunteer position. I was a waitress for many, many years, and also during the time that I was a waitress, I was a silversmith. And what I found is really interesting connection that I didn't realize once I started working at the aquarium, how many of us that were artists are also scientists. There seems to be some connection in the brain between art and science. And so I was a jeweler for 8 years, and I sold my work up and down the eastern seaboard at galleries and shops and craft shows. And towards the end of my 8 years of being a silversmith, I created a line of endangered species jewelry, because I always wanted to do something to save endangered species. From the time I was a little kid, as soon as I learned about endangered species, I was traumatized by this. You know, like, animals disappear forever, how can that be? And I want to do something about that, but what could one person possibly do to make a difference? And besides the fact I'm a kid, so what could I do? So I kind of felt pretty powerless about that. But when I started doing this line of jewelry, I said, well, I'm going to donate 20% of the proceeds from this jewelry to different environmental groups. And so that felt good, you know, I'm like, okay, I'm doing a little bit. I'm doing something to give back. But after a while, it didn't feel like enough. I wanted to be doing something more. I wanted to be doing something more tangible. And so when I was 30, for my 30th birthday, my parents gave me the amazing gift of an Earthwatch expedition. Are you guys familiar with Earthwatch? Mm-hmm. Okay, a couple of you are. If you're not, Earthwatch, it used to be based in Watertown. Now they're in Alston. And they're actually international. And what they are is an organization, it's a nonprofit, and you go on a volunteer vacation. So you pay to go on this vacation, and during this vacation you're working in the field with some researcher. And it could be anthropology, it could be biology, archaeology, all different topics, usually science topics for the most part. And you volunteer your time and your money helps to fund the doctor's project. And so I went to Hawaii, and I spent a month at a dolphin research center in Hawaii. And I fell in love, and I did not want to leave. And I said, I need to come back as an intern. They had this intern program there where you could go for 4 to 5 months and work full-time as an intern and become a dolphin trainer. I said, I need to do that. So I went home and I applied for this internship. And I was all raring to go, and I was rejected. I went, oh, crap. So what do I need to do to get this internship? And they said, well, you need to go back, because I had gone to college for 2 years, and I had a liberal arts, associate's degree in liberal arts, which is kind of like an associate's degree in nothing. And so they said, well, you need to have a different educational background. So I went back to college to get a bachelor's science degree in veterinary science and become a veterinary nurse. And after 2 years, I applied again, and I got the internship. And so I spent 4 months in Hawaii at the Dolphin Research Center and became a dolphin trainer. And it was awesome. It was so amazing. It was so cool working with these animals. And it was a dream come true. And then my next year, my senior year in college, I had an internship, because we had to do internships at this program, and the senior year was all internships. I spent 5 months at the New England Aquarium in Boston, and 4 of those 5 months were in the penguin department. And I was captivated by the penguins. Don't tell the penguins, but dolphins are still kind of my first love. Well-guarded secret. But the penguins are pretty cool. And they really sort of captured my heart. And I knew when I graduated, I wanted to stay in the Boston area. You know, my family was here, and I said, you know, I want to stay in this area. And so I decided to apply for a position in the penguin department. And so after, let me see, it took 1.5 years for a position to open up, but I was hired. And so this picture was taken just before this oil spill took place. So I'd been at the aquarium at this point for 3 years. I was now a penguin aquarist. And the woman on my right is Mandy, who is a dear friend and colleague. And this picture was taken, it was our breeding season. This was the summer of 2000. It was the middle of our breeding season, and what we're doing is weighing penguin. This is roast beef, and his brother Plum Pudding is in the cave behind there. And these might sound like, you know, funny names to you for penguins, but actually all the penguins at the New England Aquarium are given educational names to teach you something about the penguins and where they're from. And roast beef and Plum Pudding are 2 islands off the coast of South Africa and Namibia where African penguins breed. So that's how they got their names. So now around the time this picture was taken, this ship called the Treasure, this was June 23rd, 2000, sank off the coast of Cape Town, South Africa. And when it sank, it spilled 1,300 tons of its fuel oil. Now, compared to the BP oil spill, where millions and millions and millions of gallons gushed into the Gulf of Mexico, this is like a thimbleful. However, because of the location of where the ship went down and this oil spill took place, and because of the species affected, penguins are flightless birds, so they can't fly away to get away from the oil spill, it had devastating impact. And so nearly half of the entire world population of African penguins was at risk from this oil spill. So at the time, the world population was about 165,000 penguins, and about almost half of those were potentially going to be affected. Now, the Treasure sank between Robben Island here to the south and Dasson Island here to the north in Table Bay of Cape Town, and that was June 23rd of 2000. Now, ironically, 6 years and 3 days earlier, another ship managed by the same shipping company, named the Apollo C, sank on June 20th, 1994. And at that time, that was the largest penguin rescue that had ever taken place. There were 10,000 penguins, half of which, unfortunately, did not survive. And I'll talk about why that was in just a moment. So when the Treasure sank, before long, there were 20,000 penguins that were oiled. Now, the reason in the Apollo C oil spill those penguins did not survive was due to the unwitting use of unventilated transport boxes and trucks. So essentially they went to sleep. It was, a quick, painless way to go, but that is what happened. So in the 6 intervening years between these 2 oil spills, they had designed and built tens of thousands of these well-ventilated transport boxes. And as a result, we only lost, out of 40,000 penguins that were moved in these boxes during the Treasure oil spill, only 150 or so penguins were lost during the transport process, which is incredible, just miraculous success rate for that part of it. So it was in South Africa the height of the breeding season when this oil spill took place, and so a lot of penguin parents were raising chicks. So really the location and the timing couldn't have been worse. So there was a massive immediate effort that took place to rescue these parents and the chicks. And so these were some of these 20,000 adult penguins that were covered with oil. Now, what happened was the local rescue center is called SANCOB. They've been around now for 40 years. At this point, they have rescued and rehabilitated nearly 100,000 penguins, most of which were oiled. They are designed to hold about 2,000 penguins. Within 3 days of the Treasure oil spill, they were bursting at the seams with 5,000 penguins. And they said, what are we going to do? And they realized we need a much larger facility. And so what they did was they procured this train. This was a warehouse that was used to repair coal transport trains. They got this warehouse, they procured it. It had nothing in it. It had some electricity. It had a little bit of running water. But basically, in 3 days' time, from the ground up, they built a fully functioning animal hospital, which was incredible. And I just want to read you a little bit here about this, because when we arrived here, this was what we first saw. The place was just a beehive of activity, thousands of volunteers rushing in and out of this building, and it was quite an impactful moment. So I just want to read you a little bit about that setting up of the rescue center. It's hard to imagine just how much space 19,000 penguins take up. As the oiled penguins were rescued from the islands, they were brought directly to SANCOB, but before long, the small rehabilitation center was packed far beyond its intended capacity. They were already housing close to 5,000 penguins at a center designed to hold a maximum of 2,000. Estelle, who was the center manager, and the others knew they might soon have to provide refuge for another 10,000 oiled penguins, and quite possibly more. But there was no place to house them. The situation was critical. The pressure was on to find a much larger building to convert into a temporary rescue center, but locating and preparing an appropriate building was only part of the challenge. Estelle and her newly assembled rescue team would also need a small army of volunteers to staff the second facility and provide specialized care for the impending onslaught of oiled penguins. A massive warehouse normally used to repair coal transport trains was secured near Cape Town's waterfront to become the temporary rehabilitation center for the penguins. Its original designation was simply Shed Number 12. But once it was renovated, this 236,000 square foot building, over 5 acres in size, became known as the Salt River Penguin Crisis Center. As the rescue operation progressed, the plan was to gradually move the penguins that had been washed to a sprawling space adjacent to the warehouse where they would complete their rehabilitation. This outdoor area, spread over 6 acres, would eventually have several large swimming pools and more than a dozen enormous holding pens with 1,000 to 1,500 penguins in each one. Marriott Hopley, whom most of us working the rescue viewed as the patron saint of penguins, was a driving force behind the creation of the Salt River Penguin Crisis Center. This superhuman dynamo, who was a semi-retired major with the South African Air Force at the time of the Treasure oil spill, managed to procure the resources and manpower to get the Salt River facility built and ready for 16,000 penguins in just 3 days' time. It was not the first time she had worked such a miracle. During the Apollo C oil spill 6 years earlier, when she was just 26 years old, Marriott supervised the creation of a temporary rehabilitation center to accommodate the 10,000 oiled penguins that were rescued. With that experience under her belt, Marriott already knew exactly whom to contact and how to proceed the moment she received the call to help. A no-nonsense woman with remarkable stamina, strong leadership skills, and outstanding organizational expertise, she worked tirelessly to ensure the rescue center was functional as quickly as possible. I'm going to stop at that point and continue to our next slide. So, what was really astonishing walking into this rescue center, aside from seeing 16,000 oiled penguins in these pools, was seeing how many volunteers had come to help save these penguins. And this was truly the most moving part of this entire rescue operation. All of us that were there in official capacity were just blown away by these people that came from all over the world. And none of these people had any experience doing this. You know, they didn't have to be there, yet they were. You know, there were only, over the course of the 3 months that this rescue took, about 110 of us that came in staggered shifts who were actual penguin experts or wildlife rehabbers. There were another 12,500